Okay, let's get started. We're doing a deep dive today
Mhm.
into the material you shared with us about, well, a really popular idea, the law of attraction.
hmm
The basic promise that if you just align your thoughts correctly, you can attract what you want,
Mm.
success, health, happiness, that sort of thing.
It's definitely a compelling idea. And as the sources we looked at point out, it's not new. It has this history going back to the New Thought movement.
Right, late 19th, early 20th century.
Exactly. People like William Walker Atkinson were already writing about thought power way back then. And then, it got this massive boost more recently.
Yeah, with Rhonda Byrne's The Secret.
It
That book and movie were everywhere for a while.
blew it up again, absolutely.
And the core message, which your sources really nail, is fundamentally simple.
Yeah.
Like attracts like.
Yeah.
Positive thoughts supposedly bring positive experiences. Negative thoughts bring negative ones. It's often framed like your thoughts are actual forces, maybe magnetic or vibrational.
Yeah. Right. That's the framing. And because of that framing, a lot of people who believe in it aren't just satisfied with it being, a mindset thing.
They want more.
They want a harder basis, yeah. They often look towards, well, physics, trying to ground it in science.
Okay, so that brings us right to the core question for this deep dive, looking just at the material you gave us.
Mhm.
Does this law of attraction actually find any real solid support in modern physics?
hmm
And, especially, what did these specific sources conclude about the links people try to make with quantum physics?
That's precisely the angle your sources dig into. And it's quite a tangle. They trace it back how historically it was tied up with metaphysical ideas.
Meaning, like, thoughts weren't just in your head, they were actual, like, energy forces out in the world.
Pretty much, yeah. This belief that the mind could directly influence matter even before quantum mechanics came along.
Okay.
And then quantum physics arrives, early 20th century, and it just completely changes the game for understanding reality at that tiny, tiny level.
Suddenly, you've got these really bizarre concepts.
Totally mind-bending stuff, like superposition, this idea that a particle can be in multiple states uh, at the same time.
Until you look.
Well, until there's an interaction, yeah. And this observation aspect, how reality seems to take a definite shape when observed, that's perplexing.
And that's the hook,
Yeah.
right? As your sources point out, this is where law of attraction proponents sort of went, aha.
Exactly. They looked at these quantum effects and thought, maybe this is the mechanism. Maybe consciousness, our thoughts, do play that direct role in shaping reality that the law of attraction talks about.
So they often point to specific quantum ideas.
Yeah, a big one is the collapse of the wave function. So in quantum physics, you have this particle in a kind of fuzzy state of
It's
possibilities.
a superposition thing.
Right. Until some interaction happens, often called a measurement or observation, and bam, it snaps into one definite state.
Okay, but let's clarify this based on the sources. The standard view, like the Copenhagen interpretation, your material mentions,
Mm.
it says this collapse happens when the quantum system interacts with, say, a measuring device or just its environment. It doesn't necessarily require a person, a conscious observer, right?
That's a really crucial distinction the sources emphasize. It's true that some physicists, like Wigner or von Neumann, they did explore the philosophical side, wondering if consciousness could be involved.
But that's more interpretation, speculation.
Exactly. It's not the standard experimentally verified picture. So the leap that some low-wave proponents make, connecting their intention, their conscious thought, to collapsing wave functions to manifest, I don't know, a specific outcome in their life.
Like getting rich or finding soulmate.
Yeah. That leap, as one source bluntly puts it, is highly speculative and unsupported by rigorous physics. You're trying to take quantum probabilities for tiny things and scale them way, way up to control big everyday events just by thinking.
So the sources are saying the science shows interaction matters for quantum stuff, but thinking you can mentally rearrange your bank account using quantum physics. That's just not backed up.
Precisely. It's a huge, unsubstantiated jump, according to this material.
Okay, what else do they bring up?
Entanglement is another one they often mention.
Ah, the spooky action at a distance.
That's the one. Einstein wasn't too keen on it initially. It's this verified but very weird connection between particles. You measure one, and it instantly correlates with the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are.
Which definitely suggests some kind of deep connection in the universe, doesn't it?
Undeniably. At that fundamental quantum level, there's a non-local interconnectedness. And, sometimes low-A advocates see this as backing for their idea that everything, minds included, is linked, allowing thoughts to attract things.
But what do the sources say about that interpretation?
Again, they push back. They say, yes, entanglement is real for quantum systems, for microscopic things, but the sources are very clear. There is zero empirical evidence, none, nada,
Oh, yeah.
that suggests our thoughts or intentions can become entangled with big macroscopic events out there in the world in a way physics can detect or measure.
The link just isn't there in the data.
It isn't there. And this is where the sources really shift gears. They basically say, look, the physics angle is suggestive at best, maybe metaphorical, but not proven. However,
There's another explanation.
there's another field entirely that gives a much more solid, pragmatic way to understand how our beliefs do powerfully shape our experience. Psychology.
Okay. The psychological mechanisms. This feels more grounded, maybe.
Yeah.
Explains why it seems to work for people.
Absolutely. Cognitive science offers decades of research showing how our beliefs and expectations genuinely mold how we see the world and how we act in it.
Like the self-fulfilling prophecy idea.
That's a big one the sources highlight, yes.
Can you unpack that a bit from the sources?
Yeah.
If you strongly believe something will happen,
You might unconsciously change your behavior. Maybe you try harder, or maybe you avoid risks in ways that actually make that outcome more probable.
or you just interpret things differently, like if something ambiguous happens, you see it as proof you were right all along.
That's part of it, too. And the sources also bring up related ideas, like selective attention.
Meaning you notice stuff that fits your beliefs more.
Exactly. You're primed to see opportunities or information that align with what you're focused on or what you expect, and you kind of filter out the rest.
And confirmation bias.
Actively looking for evidence that supports what you already think and downplaying evidence that doesn't.
Right.
Plus motivated reasoning, basically, twisting information so it leads to the conclusion you want it to lead to.
Okay, so if someone really believes the law of attraction works, these psychological factors could explain their experience without needing any, quantum thought waves.
That's the argument the sources build.
They might just be focusing their attention differently, acting in ways consistent with their goals, noticing, confirming evidence, and that's why things seem to fall into place.
That's the core distinction the material draws out. You've got one idea, the quantum link, which needs thoughts to directly fiddle with physical reality on a large scale, something physics just doesn't support. And you've got the other idea, the psychological one, which shows how your internal state, your beliefs, your focus powerfully shapes your actions and your perception. And that influences your outcomes within the normal rules of the universe.
That makes sense. So how do the sources wrap this all up then? What's the final take?
Well, they conclude that when you look at the law of attraction through that strict lens of quantum physics, it's on shaky ground. Ambiguous terrain, one source calls it.
So the quantum language, superposition, entanglement, it sounds relevant. It resonates metaphorically.
It offers intriguing analogies, yeah. But a rigorous reading of the actual science, as the material states, gives no conclusive support for thoughts directly changing macroscopic reality.
The connection is just too weak or non-existent based on the evidence.
Yeah, the sources really frame that quantum link as tenuous and lacking empirical backing when it comes to manifesting everyday life stuff through thought alone.
So, pulling it all together from this material, the law of attraction is perhaps best understood not as a literal force validated by physics, but more like a powerful psychological model.
Exactly. A psychological model that undeniably does influence our choices, our actions, how we perceive things. It affects how we navigate the world.
So it's more about changing how we interact with reality based on our mindset,
Yes.
rather than changing reality itself directly with mind power on some fundamental physical level.
That really nails the distinction the sources are making. It's the difference between a claimed physical law and a well-documented psychological effect. It gives a much more practical way to understand why people feel it works.
Right. More understandable, less
Yeah.
magical thinking, perhaps.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on, based purely on what we've discussed from the sources.
Okay.
Consider just how powerful those psychological mechanisms are, self-fulfilling prophecy, selective attention, all that. If our beliefs and expectations genuinely can shape our experience and our actions so strongly through these known pathways, does that psychological reality itself offer a different kind of attraction power? One that operates perfectly fine within the known laws of science, even if it doesn't need a direct quantum explanation?
a power rooted in our own minds and behaviors, not in manipulating physics.
Exactly. It's certainly something to think about.